Hey guys, it's Whitney. Welcome back. Today we're gonna talk about something that gets overlooked, overshadowed quite a bit on this channel because I'm an avid fantasy reader, a fantasy lover. Like, fantasy is my jam. But today we're gonna talk about some of my favorite contemporary reads, which there aren't that many of because it's not a genre that I typically read all that much of. So these books are a list, but at the same time they sort of have a story that goes along with them. I've always been an avid fantasy reader. It's not a secret. It's nothing against contemporary. It just is what it is, you know? However, in school we read a lot of, mostly contemporary classics and stuff like that. And so the first book on my list is actually, I don't know if it's even considered a modern classic, but it's something that a lot of people read in school, and I'm one of those people. And it became one of my favorite books, even though I no longer support the author and I encourage you not to buy any of their works. Plus, this is probably their best one anyway. And that is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. So if you don't know, this is a story of basically a gang of dudes who have this rivalry with these rich kids, essentially. And one of the kids in the gang ends up accidentally killing someone, and they kind of go on the run because of that. I haven't reread this since I was in 8th grade, which is part of the reason that the summary is so crappy, because I feel like I'm missing some key elements of the summary, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not. Honestly, this is a bit dark for 7th and 8th graders. I say that, but I was perfectly fine when I read it. So the majority of the time that I was in high school, I wasn't really an avid reader. I didn't read often. I read for AR points, and I read class books, and I read the random thing here or there that my friends would hand me, like City of Bones, for instance, is something someone gave me, and Twilight is something a friend gave me. So I didn't really know my own personal tastes for a pretty long time. Even after I got out of high school, I didn't really start reading again until I was well out of college, which I went to a tech college, so I only went to college for 2 years. But still, I think I was already out of college, I believe, when I started reading heavily again. That is also around the time that I found booktube. And as someone who didn't know their own taste, you kind of get pulled into that hype. So a book that I ended up finding was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which ended up being something that I really loved. And it sort of taught me that one of my favorite elements in a contemporary novel is fandom stuff, nerdy things. I'm pretty sure that everyone knows what Fangirl is about, but I guess in case you don't, it's essentially about this girl who is going to college and learning to be on her own and navigating her new life as she transitions into adulthood and college life and all that good stuff. She is also the writer of a very, very popular Simon Snow fanfiction, and part of the plot revolves around that series ending and her finishing up that fanfiction that she had been writing for so long. And I guess sort of what it means when something so special to you starts to end, which hits you like a ton of bricks when you were into Harry Potter for so long. Maybe that's just me. So like I said before, I didn't read a lot of contemporary just in general. Most of the contemporary that I picked up around the same time I read Fangirl, I kind of gave more of a 3-star meh. And then I made some friends, and I had a friend recommend me this book called Done Dirt Cheap by Sarah Nicole Lemon, which is actually something that is newer. So I had almost given up on contemporary YA completely because I just wasn't finding anything that resonated with me. And then I found this one. Essentially, it's just a story of a friendship that grows between these two girls who meet in a really unexpected way, and their struggles in life. Like, one of them, their mother is in prison. One of them is sort of trapped in this contract with this guy doing some maybe not so legal things. There's a motorcycle gang involved. It's really interesting overall, but I think my favorite thing about it is that at some points it really just sounded like a fantasy novel, which I hadn't seen in a contemporary, and I really, really appreciated that. So I guess, in other words, her writing is stunning, and eventually I'd like to pick up another of her works. The next book that I want to talk about is one that's told in sort of an interesting format, and that is Eliza and Her Monsters. I picked this one up because of the hype, I'm not gonna lie. This story is about a pretty popular webcomic and the artist behind it and the struggles that she has with her anxiety before and after one of the most well-known fanfiction writers for her webcomic turns up at her school. So this book, like I said, is told in a pretty interesting format. You've got your typical, well, maybe you can't see it because of the light, you've got your typical writing stuff, but then you've got images from her webcomic in here along with little snippets from it, sort of like in Fangirl, which is probably why I liked it. There's also a character that has selective mutism, but this actually really stuck out to me because in high school I had a friend who basically wouldn't talk. She would write notes. I started to do a little bit of looking into it when I started reading this book. I'm glad that I never made fun of her about it or pressured her about it, which I never felt that way. I just, you know, kind of respected that she would rather write notes than speak out loud. That was fine with me. So if you're looking for that, it's in here. I can't speak for how well done it is. I can just say that it was pretty spot on with how that particular friend of mine was in high school. Another book that I'd like to take a second to talk about is The Poet X, which was completely out of my comfort zone. This is a contemporary YA told in verse about a girl who is Afro-Latinx. So I read this book for Blackathon, which was just an experience in itself. So this story just follows a teenage girl and her struggles growing up in a super religious household when she doesn't necessarily share all of the same ideals as her parents and sort of struggling with, you know, ordinary teenage things alongside of all that. But the thing that really makes it unique, or made it really unique for me, is that it's told in verse, and it's just told in a style that I hadn't really read before. Like, I've read books told in verse, but this one just, it hit differently. And I can't be certain that it's maybe not the story that's just better than some other books that I've read that are written in verse. This one, it just really resonated with me. I think because of some of my issues with organized religion mainly. Just like, I don't have a problem with anyone being religious. I respect everyone's religion. It's just the way some people demean other people for not having the same views as them. And it's just, it's very prevalent in the area where I live. So, which sort of brings me into pretty much my favorite YA contemporary of all time. That is The Serpent King by Jeff Zenner. This is one of those books that is just so hard to summarize. Think The Raven Cycle, but in contemporary terms, because I just can't with this book. I'm gonna try for you guys, okay? This story follows a boy named Dill, whose father was the leader of a church and is now in prison for some pretty disturbing reasons. So this story follows as Dill and his friends. In this story, Dill sort of has to deal with his father being in prison and the stigma that puts on him and his family in the town, and essentially how he deals with that. This is also told in multiple perspectives, so we do get the perspectives of his two best friends and how their lives are so drastically different than his own. One in a good way, one in a not so great way. There's a lot of talk about religion in this book and the effects that it has on people and places and just pretty much everything that it touches. And again, I've stated this, I don't have a problem with religion, so don't feel like if you're religious and you're watching this, I'm not attacking you. I've had religion pushed down my throat by people who don't necessarily follow their own religion correctly and then act all high and mighty about it. So just know that I'm never putting down on your religion. If it seems like I'm doing that, just call me out on it, because it wasn't meant to sound that way. In turn, I like books like this that sort of address what a toxic church or a toxic idea can do to the people who are involved with it. And that's sort of what happens in this book. Also, there's music involved because music is one of the ways that the main character deals with what is going on in his life, which I really like. And then you've got one of his best friends who is very into a fandom of a very popular fantasy series. And I feel like I'm giving a review of this book. Okay, we're done. I hope that you've learned something. If you've got questions about it, please let me know, but I feel like everyone should read it. So if you were ever wondering what is my favorite contemporary YA novel, it is this one, The Serpent King by Jeff Zenner. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, because I really enjoyed talking about it. I don't get to talk about them a lot. And I'd like to know if you guys have any recommendations for any YA contemporary books that you might think that I would like, because I do want to give the genre another chance. I want to find more books that I can love. That's it for today. If you guys have any suggestions for other things you want to see from me, feel free to leave those in the comments too. But I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening again, or for the first time, or for the last time. We share this moment, and I'm grateful for this.